I don't know whose pen it is. Let me just keep it. Yeah. Okay, it's 6:45, so we will call the meeting to order. The confirmation of board member attendance and voting is going around. It's hard to see everyone who's down there. So keep your eyes peeled for vouchers, approval of voucher via DocuSign. I'm sure, I know some voucher went around, but keep an eye on that. Is there public comment? If there is, you can just come up to here, and I think there's no one here who wasn't here for the prior meeting, but remind people that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and we hear the matters of concern and may investigate as appropriate, but the board doesn't respond at the time. We just hear it. So, yep. If you have any public comment, come on up. Okay. Is there a motion for approval of minutes of 9 September 2024?
So, second.
Did you get that, Selena? No. I know Jessica Bass was the second. Who was who moved? Susan. Okay, reports and updates will bring us to the superintendent report, and the board can see it over here and the public can see it over there.
I have 2 computers that I'm running to make sure everybody can see, and folks in the audience can see. So welcome to the October AOS board meeting. Just a reminder of our service promise, which is to interrupt educational inequities and create schools where every child and staff member thrives, one conversation at a time. Our student enrollment for October, we are at 1374 overall, and that is a difference of -6 from September. And one of the things that I've added for this month is we have had to do our performance reports that are that we do for some of the grant funds in terms of the professional development and the learning that we do. And so I wanted to be able to share just overall the demographics for our AOS as a whole. You will notice that I don't have some of our smaller schools in there in particular because these numbers have students with disabilities in there, and their total numbers in those schools are small enough that that could be identifiable information. So you won't see those individuals there. But at the end of this meeting, this slideshow with these specific demographics will be on this agenda, so folks can kind of scroll through and see, what our AOS sort of looks like between all of our schools in terms of demographics. Thank you, Rhonda, for putting that work together. And it's something that we have to do every year as sort of part of that process when we're reporting when using federal funds. Staffing update. We still have a long-term sub position in regular ed in one of our elementary schools. Art long-term sub. Interventionists in SPED. We still have positions in speech and language, GT, behavior intervention, and special education, and are always looking for ed techs in our schools. We have some bus driver position open, coaches, substitute teachers, and a night custodian at the high school. I did want to recognize two hires in our central office. We have a special education part-time administrative assistant, and that's Stephanie Barnes, and she's helping out in the special ed office. And then in our payroll and HR in the business office, we have Summer Cast who joined us. And so it's exciting to have our AOS office fully staffed. And if anybody wants to see any further opportunities, you can click on the link here in my report, or you can go to the website and find those employment opportunities there for the district. And now the school highlights. We've been through a full month of school through September. Some of the highlights, for the high school is we had the Freshman Community Service Day, and Matt talked a little bit about that. The experience and communications he shared with students. It's been Homecoming and Spirit Week. One of my favorite parts of that was Barbecue Dad and Soccer Mom, and sort of see the teachers and the students interacting in that way. Dressing up was really great. There was a station outside of this in the social studies wing of 2 staff members, and they decided to choose a Midwestern accent as soccer moms to sort of make sure that people were nourished and had fluids that were going through the halls. PT conferences were happening, and also one of the interesting experiences at the high school is the Haystack studio-based learning that juniors and seniors take place. It's something that you could check out through the Chalk Talk, and it's something that is done countywide. Students from MDI, Deer Isle, and Ellsworth and Bucksport participate in those activities. It's kind of pretty cool. And then just taking a look through Chalk Talk, and one of the things that I noticed in the honors anatomy and physiology, students were learning about the skull and the different parts of the skull. And I didn't know that there was such a thing as high-tech Play-Doh, but apparently there is, and they were utilizing that to identify the specific portions of the skull. What's really interesting is I know someone who's getting into a nursing degree, and they were actually working on the skull portion of their anatomy and physiology class, and I asked them if they knew about high-tech Play-Doh that might help them sort of figure out those portions, but that was new to them. Over at the Ashley Bryan School, they have the TLC book groups, and the TLC is a teaching and learning collaborative, and what happens with the book groups is all of those students from across the various islands have some time and share the books that they're reading, and that's something that happens on a regular basis. I was there to see the kids at Boatworks, which is learning woodworking skills, and so that's a very exciting piece that they do. On our one of our days where we have our admin team, we were out there and held it at the Cranberry Island School. And so that was really nice to be able to sort of interact with the kids a little bit, and then we were able to sort of do the work that we do in prepping for our schools. And this year, the administrative team will be spending time at all of our schools as sort of part of our own learning when we do our A-team meetings. At Frenchboro, have some sad news that the last 2 students will be moving off at the end of this month. And so they'll be sort of working through that. And there are communities across the state and districts that have schools that may have no students for a little while, but our island communities work really hard at trying to be full-time working and fishing communities. And so I'll be working with the board and thinking about maintaining that school as we sort of move forward. But they're still doing a lot of awesome learning. They were working on understanding the geographic grid system this past month, and spend a lot of time looking at the engineering of the carriage roads and understanding sort of cross sections and sort of what that looks like in terms of how you design those. And then as part of that, they went on a carriage road ride. Over at Connors Emerson, if you've been by, the construction fence is up, and that whole process has begun. So that is both exciting and terrifying at the same time in terms of all the work that'll be getting done and supporting the teachers and the students with all the busyness that'll be happening. But I know Heather and her team have done a wonderful job in prepping the school and the students for this 2-year process. PT conferences have begun. Grade 7 students were out on the floating classroom, and grade 2 students are learning about fall and how cooler weather impacts people, plants, and animals. Over in Trenton, again, we have PT conferences across the district happening. Their after-school program began this past month. For show choir, they're going to be doing Labyrinth, so that sounds exciting. And they do this great thing that's been happening at Trenton for quite a while. It's the K-8 PAW Awards, and it gets morphed and changed, but the idea is that it's given to a student who demonstrates respect, responsibility, perseverance, and safety, specifically when they make a positive impact on others, and that's highlighted every week in their newsletter, so it's a really good thing to pay attention to. Over at the Pematic School, their care closet was opened, and I'd like to thank families who donated materials and staff and local businesses and organizations to sort of help kids and families. The 5th, 6th, and 7th graders went to Boston to go to the Museum of Fine Arts, and they went and saw Mamma Mia. It was sort of a French, they were looking at French paintings from French class, and then went to see that play Mamma Mia in terms of music, so they had a great experience. Kindergarten, one of the kindergarten classes there did a community walk, so they went to those important community locations, police department, they went to the bank, post office, and the library. And over on Swans, they do the Walk and Bike to School Month, and that's always an exciting opportunity. The middle schoolers, if you remember last year, they're still sort of continuing some of the research that they're doing, where they're focusing a lot on water quality, and they're working with the MDI Biolab and Dartmouth College to do that work. Grades 3 through 5 are working on narrative writing involving characters and settings and problems and solutions. And in K2, they're focusing on those building blocks of math from skills of simple cardinal counting, adding and subtracting, and then getting into odd and even numbers. Over at Mount Desert, grade 6 was out and about studying the rock cycle over at Stand Beach and Great Head. The 8th graders will be having their first fundraiser on the 26th, so if you have an opportunity and you're around the Salisbury Farms hardware store from 9 to 1, you can go and support the 8th grade. And then students recently volunteered at the neighborhood house to bag candy for Halloween. And then over in Tremont, grades 3 through 8 students participated in the main 3-year assessment, and that actually has been going district-wide. K1 students made observations around the school on the changes in the natural world through the seasons. It's something that they do throughout the year. And then grades 7 and 8 have started a new project from Rural Aspirations through the Maine Forest Collaborative, and it seems like a really interesting project in terms of connecting working communities and their forests, and so that's pretty cool of the things that are happening around the district. And yes, it is budget time, and so and this is for board members and other folks. Is now my report will have all of the dates that folks will need in terms of preliminary budgets, drafts, final budgets, when those school board approvals are, and then the town meeting dates are all listed there. So you can go there for information if you're looking for that. Right now, Connors Emerson is out of the gate first and had their preliminary budget, and the AOS will be doing ours this evening, but you can go and take a look. And just so you all know that at the top of each of the slides is our current insurance rate increase. I will keep that there and what we budgeted this past year. And then also the FY25, so our current budget, those numbers are still there. So they're there for reference as we go through the process. But like every month, I'll be going through and sort of updating where we are in all of our schools. And so finally today, as part of my report, is I wanted to share a little bit about responding to school violence. And there was an event at the high school a few weeks ago that rattled our community. And I want you to know that there are strategies and things that we are doing from what we hear from the community and our reflection. And I think the first thing I'd like to say, and it was highlighted at the high school meeting, is that students were outside today and sharing the importance of wanting to stop violence at schools. And I had an opportunity to talk to some students, and it was a great opportunity to sort of being able to hear what students had to say, which would be sort of worked into the way that the school will respond to those incidences. And so there are proactive strategies. So in any institution, you want to make sure you're laying the groundwork so those things don't happen. And I think really importantly are building community and student agency. And some of the ways that the high school does that work, and I think can continue to strengthen that work, is the review board and the restorative board and participation of those. One of the things that I learned today is some of our students weren't aware of those and how important those are in building community in school. And so the idea of elevating the work that students are doing, because we have high school students on the review board and the restorative board, and sort of dealing with issues that happen at school and doing that as a community, that's a pretty powerful. And then student advisories. Also being clear on our restorative practices and what that looks like across our school is another piece of that sort of proactive strategy. And then also, really focusing on staff training, support in understanding and managing dangerous behavior, and sort of clarifying the protocols that adults need to respond to when they're in those situations. And also thinking really hard about making sure that our reporting process, and students take time to talk to adults that they feel comfortable with, but also making sure that there are anonymous ways to share information. And so being sure that our bullying and Title IX reporting are really visible and easily accessible. And our staff in the IT department are working on making sure that those pieces are easily available. Right now, that's in the student handbook at the high school, which we learned at the high school meeting. You have to scroll to the bottom and we go to the handbook, and it's right there, very prevalent in the handbook, but as a way of sort of making that more prominent, I think it would be really important in terms of making sure people have ways to report when things are happening. And then, the importance of reflecting, reviewing, and then revising. I think what I've heard most importantly is the importance of communication to families when things like this happen in our community, and also providing support. And I learned a lot in my conversations with this morning with students, and we'll share some of those as those come together. And I think we also have to think carefully on reviewing and understanding our laws, policy, and procedures. And that happens at both the board and policy level. That happens with administrators being able to sort of review and reflect, to do the best that we can in supporting our students and our families. And so I wanted to make sure that people recognize that I have been listening, and there are a variety of strategies at both the proactive level, but I think a lot of things that we already do and things that we can strengthen, and then also at a more procedures and policy level where we can take a look and review those pieces. And so that's my report.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mike on the board? Okay, that brings us to directors of teaching and learning. Rhonda and Julie.
We want to make time and space for the summer school presentation, which is our really big part here, but we also want to provide an opportunity to answer any questions on the October note. Did everybody get a chance to review it?
I think everyone can hear you in the background.
Oh, good. Does anybody have any questions about the October note?
It appears not.
Great. So I'd like to invite Crystal, who's going to be our summer school presenter.
I just said I'm so glad we're in the auditorium tonight while I'm presenting. I'm not really sure the best place to be, so I'll be here so you guys can see, and I'll try to turn around, so I'm not being rude to anybody while I'm talking. So thanks for having me. I was asked to present about this year's summer school, and I thought after year 3, it's a good time to reflect on the past 3 years and not just this year. So tonight we're going to review kind of how the program has morphed into what it is now. Just to give you a really big backstory, This program started probably 15 years ago through the Southwest Harbor Public Library. And it morphed from probably 40 students over the course of a summer to 140, which is pretty impressive. And our schools have grown from a tutoring model to a full-time school, which I think is pretty amazing as well. So Mike, you can go to the next slide, please. This was shown to the board 3 years ago when we started, and it's the goals of the program. So I won't read each and every one, but really the overall goal is to reduce regression. And so we call that the summer slide. And what we're trying to figure out, and you'll see that later in the slides, is how do we showcase that when students come for 1 week, or they come to 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. It's hard to say that in just 1 week we can reduce the regression of the summer slide, but we also have to financially think about the program and the impact to the overall district. If we offer 4 weeks to every student, it's just not feasible. Staffing is still a challenge from year 1 to year 3. So that's something we continue to look back and reflect on. How do we make this meaningful, but also, again, budgetarily friendly, because it's expensive to run a program even for just 4 weeks. We do also have a principal, which happens to be myself for most of the year. We had Heather Dorr also step in this year. Thank you. I went to a conference in Vegas, and so Heather stepped in and took over, which was wonderful. We've also moved to a K-8 model with the high school joining us for part of the summer school experience. So that's a nice morphing you'll see. And we want to balance the academic learning in the classroom with also outdoor STEM activities. It is summer. We can't forget that it's summer. It's hot in the classrooms, and kids want to explore. They want to touch things. They want to go outside. And so far, Trenton's been a great place for that to happen. It's got a great field and trails, and the kids have learned and love to be outside there as well. So over the course of 3 years, I've designed curriculum that goes across more science and social studies themes, and it's all integrated into literacy, math, and science. So the topics you can see here, I'll give you a minute just to look those over. And then the student participation, this would be something that if I was working with my staff, and I think working with administrators, using a model of notice and wonder is something I think is really important for the board to think about. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but it's really important for us to think about what we learned about a program through reflection. And after 3 years, you can see that there have been some great changes, and there's been some increasing numbers in some schools, but there's also been some decreasing numbers in some schools. Some years we have participation from the entire AOS, and some years we don't. So when I say notice and wonder, I kind of just want to probe you a little bit, thinking about what are some things you notice as I go through this presentation, but especially in terms of student participation. What do you notice from this slide? And also, what does it make you wonder? Because as a program that's run through the AOS, our goal is to continue to grow and refine the program to make it even better. So I do challenge you today to think about what do you notice and what do you wonder?
The numbers are increasing, and I wonder if year to year what the tagging protocol is for our kids' parents voluntarily wanting to do this, or is it?
Yeah, so that's great because it leads into some of the discussion we can have. So every child or family is able to sign up for 2 weeks. They do sometimes request 4, which is perfect, and we try to guarantee 2 weeks. The first year, you can see with lower numbers, many students got 4 weeks just because we didn't have as high a number of interest. But as the numbers grow, we can't give 4 weeks to everyone. So there is a tagging system in place. So everyone requests what they would like up to 4 weeks, and they tell us their availability. And then after that, we look at the student need, and that comes from building-based conversations. So I am the overall coordinator, and I work with 2 ESY coordinators. We talk with every special education teacher. We try to talk to Title I teachers, and I speak with all the principals and share the class lists. So once everyone has the 2 weeks from the initial registration, we look back and we try to find the students that need 3 weeks or need 4 weeks. And a little bit later, I'll show you more about like how we choose that, but it really goes along with the academic need, the behavioral need, and the social emotional need. We also think a lot about attendance because there are some students that struggle just to get to school. And if we can increase the attendance at summer school, they're more likely to attend more at their sending school as well. So those are the categories we try to look at when we determine who needs summer school more than 2 weeks.
I noticed that the numbers for Trenton are really high, which is fantastic.
I'm a really good salesperson.
Yeah, I bet. But I'm sure some of that too is also proximity. And so I really wonder if moving the program around to different locations would encourage more people to participate and then maybe grow the enthusiasm for it at some of the other schools.
Exactly, and after 3 years, this was one of the goals that we put together, is that we would reflect and refine, is this the location always, or do we move that around? So later in the goals section, we're going to do some surveying. We're going to ask staff, we're going to ask families, and we're going to figure out where is the best location for us to try it again. So we can figure that out. Is it just that Trenton has a really good principal who's spokespersoning this? Maybe. Or is it that we really do have the close location and kids feel safe, it's their school, they know it, families know it, they trust us. We also have a very high Trenton staff. So what you don't see here is the number of Trenton staff members who are part of the summer school program. And that's kind of a stretch your notice and wonder. I wonder if staff from other schools would be more willing if it was in their building. I can move on. Thanks. Oh, sorry.
In regard to what you were just saying, are all staff offered the opportunity to teach summer school?
Yep, we this last year we put everything out. I think it was in January. We got all the student registrations out, which was pretty quick for us. Since the first year, I think we put it out in June for the July start. I think we started July 11th, and we put it out at the beginning of maybe end of May, beginning of June. We still had that many students. That was great. So everything went out in January, and by March we confirmed all the positions that we could, and then we kept it open. So there's teacher positions, there's the special ed teacher positions. We do balance the salaries just to be kind of fair, so it's a consistent, and we do an ed tech increase as well for the summer school because they are putting in extra time in the summer, and we know we live in a very competitive area where you can make a lot of money in the summer. And so, yeah, it's open to everybody. The cooks, actually even the coordinator position goes open. So anybody who's interested is welcome to apply for those positions, just in case you're wondering. And then it goes through a process where Julie and Rhonda interview for the lead coordinator, and then from there, the interviews happen for everybody else.
You readily are able to fill the positions every year?
Well, I would say this last year was the most difficult. We had to get creative, and part of when we decided where students got the additional 4 weeks, we had to think carefully on how many students we could have that had ed tech support in the classroom. And so that was tough. There were some times where we couldn't offer another week because we just didn't have the staff towards the end. So there is kind of that cap where we have to think about who gets those spots, and we have to think about staffing when we do that. On this next slide, you can see that there are some things that are similar. So the first 3 rows are all the same. Basically, we've run the program for 4 weeks from 8 to 3, which is for staff. The breakfast program and the transportation takes care of the 8 to 9. So all the students are transported to school and dropped off somewhere between 8 and 8:30. We try to get there around 8:25. It gives the kids about 30 minutes to have breakfast and recess. We hope they choose both. It is free. So we do encourage kids to eat breakfast when they get to school. But the program itself runs from 9 to 3 with a 1-hour lunch and recess break as well. We are providing transportation, which was kind of mentioned. All the schools provide it from their sending school. So students have to get dropped off at the school that they attend, and then the bus will pick them up. So we've been able to run 3 buses, and that's been pretty great because it shows that our transportation across the entire district is possible. Of course, it's a lot smaller in numbers, But, we're having those conversations about reorganization and what kids can and can't do. And I promise they can, even in kindergarten, ride a bus from 7:45 to 8:30. It's possible. They've done it. I can't say that's not without sometimes bus supervisors, but it does happen. We do have the breakfast and lunch program that through the state we can offer for free to all students, which is also amazing for our kids. And you can see that we started with an incoming first grade, and that hasn't changed because we think that students really need that year of kindergarten. It's important for them to have that because our job is to review curriculum, not teach all of the new curriculum. So if they have a year of kindergarten, they're struggling in kindergarten, that's fine because we're going to review kindergarten, but we're not going to teach kindergarten. So it's important that they do have that year. It also gives the chance for schools to look back at, are students ready to move on? And sometimes we have kindergartners that aren't ready to move out of kindergarten. So we want them to have that second year in their school before they come to us as well. We did stretch the program. The first year we went up to 6th grade and then we went to 9th grade. You can see we also have been able to partner with the high school sometimes, which is nice that if they can run a program with the high school, then that's wonderful. But again, they do have that extra support. We have the custodians, we have a full-time nurse. That's a huge piece, having a full-time nurse. She gets her money's worth, I promise. She works very hard in the summer. Between sunscreen and bug spray and Band-Aids, she is very busy. And we have grown in class sizes too. So we used to do a K2 classroom, 2 K2 classrooms, 2 3-5 classrooms, and then we moved to a K1 classroom, to 2 K1 classrooms. We did try to do a 2-3 classroom and a 4-5, but we had too many students, so we actually had to add another class to that. And I'm really excited to say that our middle school, we've been able to have a middle school 2 weeks the second year and 4 weeks for this third year. And we were pretty full. So we had between 12 and 15 students every week. And that's exciting. It's hard to get middle schoolers to commit to anything. And when they come 5 days a week to summer school, that's a big deal. And when they actually say, can I have another week, which some of the students did this year because they met so many new friends, that's even better. So I think getting the middle schoolers in was a big deal, and now that they're in, I think they're pretty psyched to see each other every summer. The goal of 3-year programming, when we started this, we talked a lot about what would this look like and how would it change every year so that kids who came in K1, 2 would have a different experience in 3, 4, 5, and then they'd have a different experience in 6, 7, 8. So one of the ways we do that is we flip the curriculum. But the other way we do that is I bring different guests in, and they have a different job when they come. So the first year we really focused on author visits, and we wrote a lot of grants, which was wonderful. So we didn't have to pay for any of the authors, but we had one author every single week. And thanks to the Southwest Harbor Library, they donated a book, and they still do. So 3 years going, they have donated one book every week to every child that attends summer school. So that's a huge, huge contribution they make to our program. We've also had the outdoor school for all 3 years, which has been wonderful. It's every Friday. The students go out and they explore in the trails and they learn something connected to each theme or topic. So that's new every week and that's new every year because the themes change. We've also partnered with Healthy Acadia, which again gives their programming all for free for us. So again, thank you to all of those that support Healthy Acadia. They come in and do cooking classes, which is a big hit. Middle schoolers this year learned how to make English muffin pizzas, but they had to actually chop all the vegetables. And so typically you think of an English muffin pizza, it has, the English muffin, the sauce and the cheese. They had broccoli and onions and peppers and mushrooms, and they had to cut everything fresh. And then they had a little toaster oven. So that was exciting. They learned about yogurt parfaits and trail mix, not just the M&Ms, but the entire trail mix. So again, it's really helping them to learn how to cook for themselves because sometimes, especially in the summer, they don't have anyone home to make them snacks. And so we want to encourage that healthy eating. Acadia National Park has also been an amazing support. And I think we know we live in a beautiful area. We want to take advantage of that. And during their busiest times, they have found a way to come to us all 3 years. They do a full day field trip at our school. They are willing to do it outside of our school as well. We just haven't figured out transportation for that many students to all participate. But we have the field and they set up, and when it rains, we put shelters over our stage at Trenton, and the kids all learn underneath these tarps. And they put their raincoats on, their rain boots, and they go outside. It's pretty amazing. And they are working really close with me every year. They make sure that all the things that they do are related to the topics and themes. That's kind of the deal in the partnership with all these people. They have to try to connect to what I've put in place for the themes. The first year we also had Soames Manel come over and talk about loons, which worked really well with our theme. And the second year we brought in the Frogtown Puppeteers to talk about the ocean. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the ocean theme they put on with the surfer dude. Anyone ever seen that one? It's a good one. And then this year we brought in Tom Spear, who's been working in our schools doing mindfulness and breathing techniques. And so he came in each week and he worked with our students as well. So we're trying to change it up a little bit every year. And then maybe we'll get to the point where we start to go back and we just have to rotate through every 3 years. I might get bored of that though, so no promises that I'll keep it just that way. These next 3 slides I think are great to see just some of the faces. This is summer school. This is my favorite part of summer school. It's the part that I want to just like stop and pause for a second and let you get a chance to look at each year from 2022 to 2024. The top corner, I just want to give you an example, not only because she's my daughter, but the one in sunglasses is my daughter. And that's 3 students from 2 different schools, from 3 different grades, who met, became friends. They were together for 1 week, and all went home and told us parents that there was a talent show at the summer school program on the stage on Thursday, and they needed to have matching shirts. Now, I'm the coordinator, so I knew there was no talent show, but she still tried to convince me that there was a talent show. So all of us moms went in on it, didn't know each other, all of the moms, and went out, bought the same shirt, and they all showed up. And Thursday, there was a talent show. There was only 3 people in it, those 3 girls, but it was amazing. So it just kind of shows the friendship, and I think the bottom picture as well of the group that was on the stage, it just shows that it doesn't matter where they're from. These connections that they're forming now are larger than just the athletics. They get together for AYS, which I also fully support. And there's a lot of sports program that brings our kids together, but this is how we bring our kids together with literacy and math. And so when they come to school, academics is also pretty cool. We have fun with it. And when they get to the high school, no matter which high school they choose, they have some friends along the way. So the next step is planning summer 2025, and part of that is figuring out what is the location, where is the location going to be. We know that it matters, or it looks like it might matter. We've got to try to figure out if it does matter. We also need to make sure that it's a location that everyone can get to, and we can get transportation again to get us to all those locations. What are the themes and topics going to be? What is the difference between summer school and extended school year? And I think just for a second, I want to explain that. So summer school is for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, as long as you attend the school. We've even had some students who are homeschooling moving into our schools or coming back to our schools participate in summer school as a nice transition from the homeschool experience back to the regular school experience, and that has been fantastic. But extended school year isn't for everyone. And so those are for our students who have plans that say that their regression is so severe that they have to get direct instruction. And so in our special education program, the one thing that we do very well in our district is we provide programming in addition to their regular education programming. And so this is really the first model where we've been able to do that in the summer, because typically we've provided ESY, or extended school year programming, for the students that have those minutes. And then there really isn't anything else, or wasn't anything else in our schools for the students that didn't have that. And so we were doing a good job meeting their minutes, but it wasn't in addition to regular learning. And so now the students that participate in extended school year also get to participate in the summer school model. So they get to be included into all the activities that the students are doing and all of the review learning from the grade level that they're in. And then they still get their pull-out or direct instruction. So now they come not just because they have to come for an hour to do tutoring, a model like that. They come because they get to see their friends, they get to engage in fun activities, they get to learn grade level content that sometimes they're not exposed to because they have so many minutes that they're pulled from their classroom. So I think it's a really important model that we try to continue so those students feel like they're a part of something. They don't just come to summer school because they're struggling in school. Staffing, again, continues to be a challenge, but we're hoping, again, to get the word out there. I think the more staff that try the program, the more staff are willing to come and explore the program because, you know, the word spreads that it's pretty fun, it's great, and all the lesson plans are done for them. You can spread the word. All the lesson plans are done for them. And so it's pretty nice to walk in. They're kind of like subbing at the grade level that they're pretty familiar with. Our partners and guests, we want to continue to bring in new partners and new guests because as we know in our area, we're very fortunate to be where we are. We have a lot of people that want to support us. And so we want our students to get as rich of an experience as possible. And I think that comes from our partners and our guests. The cost is the biggest thing. So this is the first board that I'm going to say this to, but then everyone is going to say this to their own school boards as well. We have written a lot of grants. When I say a lot of grants, I mean a lot of grants to fund this program. And when you write grants, you really have about 2 years, right, Nancy? And after 2 years, you're supposed to start to really put that into your budget. Last year, you saw that in the individual budgets. We asked each school to try to get to about $30,000 between extended school year and the regular summer school costs. Not everyone got all the way there, but that was the goal, to try to get there. And this year, we're going to have to work to figure out what the budget's going to be. What are we going to keep? What do we have to cut? But I do expect that you will be talking about summer school, both extended school year and regular programming at your individual boards. So I do hope that this helps you to support what we're doing because it does make a difference. And then our hope is that after next year, we will bring you some student data. So kind of like anything you do in a pilot, the first 3 years, you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure out, are you making a difference? And you modify every year. And then by the 4th year, you need to look at the data and say, what is working and who is it working for? So the demographics section that Mike showed you, we'll do some things like that. And we'll bring in some data from AIMSweb and NWEA. And I think this year, we're about 50%. So depending on if they came from 1 week or 4 weeks, we had about 50% of the students that participated made growth on their AIMSweb and NWA and 50% that didn't. So I don't know what it was before because we don't have those numbers and we don't have a whole district picture yet, but I'm hoping that next year we can bring some numbers for you so we can gain some more support.
Are there questions for Crystal? I'm going to try to. I guess so we saw the growth in participants, and I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of child care services that's available to these families. How do you kind of navigate, I wouldn't say those taking advantage of because education should be available, but how do you kind of navigate through the students that need to be in the classroom versus the parents that need their children at school because there's nowhere else for them to go?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, again, the parents do register for up to 4 weeks, so they tell us what they want, and then we do our best to help them out. But it does go by placement from the classrooms and like from each school. So we don't do it because the parents need 4 weeks of free care. We have definitely supported some parents, though, that reached out to me and said, I really need 4 weeks. And I just said, your child doesn't qualify. They don't have the academic need. But we've worked with our district social workers to try to get them grants or camperships. So there's a lot of things that our local camps do to provide free programming. And so we were able to last year, I think, partner 3 families with Camp Beechcliff. And so they got a week free at Camp Beechcliff or maybe at a reduced rate, however their campership works. That helps. We've also partnered with some of the local organizations. I know in the past I partnered with Harbor House and Camp Beechcliff, and I think that's part of our work. When I did it through the Southwest Harbor Library, kids could go half day because it was only a half day program, and then their parents would pay a reduced rate, and they go the other half of the day at either the Harbor House or Camp Beechcliff. I know in Trenton we have a place called Tiny Tykes. They are amazing about taking kids just for like that last part of the day. So I think Trenton families were able to go from like 3 to 5 at Tiny Tykes. They could also go first thing in the morning and then get picked up there. So I think it's about that outreach that we're trying to do, which is very similar to our early release days. It's not different. We're struggling to find childcare for families that don't have childcare. And I think for summer school, I would hope, and I think I've heard, that families are appreciative of the program, but I don't have a family that I could say has taken advantage of the program at all. They're very grateful for everything they get for the weeks, and they're also very grateful if we can help them find other opportunities for their children.
Thank you so much, Crystal, for coming. That was great.
everyone's favorite item, preliminary budget. Which is going, takes a long time to pass it out. Thank you, see you later. Thank you.
So just want to share sort of that snapshot in time. Preliminary budgets are what we use that inform us as we go sort of go forward and start building our budgets for the next fiscal year. And so on the sheet that you see above, we have what our estimated carryover is and what our actual carryover and sort of what that difference is. Right now, we're looking at an audited figure of $385,000. And that includes some of the savings that you see on the right there. Some of that is some increased interest that we received on funds that were saved, some money that was not spent in curriculum development, and on technology, and some of our special services and within business office. Part of that had to do with transition of staff members in those positions or not having a position within special services for a while. And like I reported earlier, we have finally fully staffed that. And so that sort of makes up that unaudited number as we go into building a budget for next year. And so, our accounts are pretty much human heavy as you sort of go through that list in terms of the positions and our intention of sort of spending those funds for those positions. And overall, after Nancy and I sort of looked at spending, so you do spending for a couple of months and then you have to guess sort of what you're going to come out with. But our best guess is, looking at the bottom, that we're looking pretty good in terms of what our expectations are for this budget for next year. In terms of the reserves, special education, again, that is sort of capped. So the AOS Special Education Reserve was designed many years ago, and each of our schools in the AOS over the years were contributing money into that special education reserve until it reached the $750,000 mark. And then at that point, nobody is no longer putting funds in. Your individual schools are utilizing and putting funds into your own reserves. So that fund is sort of gaining interest as the year goes on until it's needed. And the way that works is that if you have a student of particular need that was an unanticipated need and exhausts your own reserves, then at that point the school can ask for those funds from the AOS reserve to cover those costs. And then there is a payback plan for those over time, but it is the interest is pretty minimal in terms of paying it back, and then we design that over time so that you can meet your needs. The whole idea was to support any of the AOS schools that might find themselves with an out-of-district placement or a need that was unanticipated and they didn't budget for. We have our deductible coverage and fees that sort of supports that part of our insurance, and then the curriculum coordinator fund right now, you can see our projected balance, and that sort of just covers some of those logistical supports when putting on professional development opportunities and the amounts that are there and supporting that. As we go into our next year, the COLA increase that was finalized is a 2.5% increase, and then you can see there on the sheet what we've had since 2009 in terms of COLA for the country overall. And so, we're looking good moving into next year. I think one of the areas that will be of particular need as we're looking forward is talk a little bit about the CDS transition from the responsibility for those services in case management, child and development services for children 3 and 4-year-olds, being transitioned to our local schools. And there are some schools in the state that are sort of working through that. There are some of the folks who sort of jumped in to test it out first. I believe we have until July 28th before being fully sort of into that mode where then those students with disabilities that are out there, $300 or $400, the case management of that will be the school district's responsibility. One of the things that we're noticing in terms of school districts that are jumping into that process now, many schools, and ours included, have already very busy special services departments in terms of working and supporting their K-12 students across the district. And we have two folks who work really hard in supporting those teachers and those students. It seems like in terms of making that transition and dealing with the youngest kids, that we may have to have somebody that's focusing specifically on that. That will sort of be setting the stage for our schools and getting into that process in 2028 and beginning that. And that's probably something that you'll see me pull forward in terms of strengthening our special ed department to sort of support that need in the individual schools, where their focus will be on those students, working with that faculty, and particularly on those kiddos. And then looking at other opportunities as we get closer to that. But this would sort of be the stepping stone in moving sort of forward on how we can do that really well within our district. And so some of those are the biggest changes that I see that we may see in the budget going forward for next year.
Regard to that transition, which you said it's fully going to take place July 2028. But we're anticipating that some of those funds will also shift over.
Yes, and the way that it's been reported to us is they are for students with disabilities and need, that the DOE would sort of front load them. And right now, you've heard me talk a lot about the special education funds that you get, and there's usually a 2-year lag on that. One of the things that the state put forward in their proposal was to sort of front load that for this pre-K4 population. And our special ed department is speaking really closely with individual schools that took it on this year and to sort of see how that is sort of working. And so we have some great districts that are working that through, and we're communicating with them to sort of understand how that works and see if they're getting their needs met through that process. So that was a particular selling point for the state, that they were front loading those needs. And those financial needs based on the number of students you have in that population.
Other questions? It's just for me, for just like a timeline reference, because we hear it a lot, especially when we're talking about building projects and building all homes. But I know we are actively pursuing switching from AOS to RSU. When will we start seeing those changes affect?
Well, right now we're in the process of doing RPC or Regional Planning Committee updates to staff, and we're sort of at a halfway point, and then we'll be spending more time and then eventually getting out into the communities. I think a goal for the RPC is to begin conversation with communities about a reorganization plan in the early spring with a potential vote in the summertime around primary time. And then of course, if that is the timeline, that we have a lot of work to do on that, then you have a year, once it's voted, you have a year to sort of build your new budget, and then that new budget wouldn't start until the following year. So if a reorganization passed this summer, you'd have the following year, and then the new budget would start FY27, if that was the case. And then depending on what the AOS, what that reorganization looks like in terms of pre-K through 12 and how you organize, that's something that will probably, depending on what the RPC lands on our model, excuse me, probably would take a little time to sort of integrate. It's not something that you
Right.
Take a switch, but it's definitely something that you would have to be planful about as you move forward. But that's like, if everything aligns, hopefully you'll vote for this on.
Thank you.
Any other questions? How does what's the viewpoint of the dashboard look like for mandatory pre-K? From when have you heard anything about when it maybe be net, we keep hearing it's gonna be net, do you know anything more than that?
I have not heard anything. The CES question and putting that piece into place is sort of taking over conversations, but I haven't heard anything of whether or not there's anything in the queue right now in the legislature to make that happen. Or down the road, so I'm not sure.
Can you just, what other schools, what schools don't have pre-K?
Right now, Connors Emerson, everybody else, and right now, Trenton does a partnership with Down East Community Partners as part of theirs, but everybody else has a pre-K.
Okay, so you'll come next time, we'll have more.
Yeah, we'll have a first draft of AOS budget.
Okay, action items, we have two. The first is approval of administrative review of the consolidated MDIRSS AOS91 emergency response plan.
So at the
Is there a motion for that? Does anyone want to offer for passage of approval of that?
So moved.
Okay, second. Any discussion?
Just like to share that principals in each of their schools have worked with their safety teams to go through the checklists that are part of our plans to ensure that they are prepared for any kind of all-hazards situation. One of the things that I did this year was I spent some time with our public safety officials on some particular information that came through the main analysis center that sort of looks at school safety, and met with our public safety and sort of reviewed some of the pieces that were particular to our plan, and we were sort of in alignment, so that was sort of good, and then made sure that our principals were aware of that, and they let me know that they've gone through that process and checked their plans with their schools. So.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, resolution calling for full funding of IDEA, Individual with Disabilities Education Act, and everyone should have to link in the budget.
And so this resolution, this board, a version of this board voted on this a number of years ago, and over the years there's the state of Maine has worked on providing up to 55% of funding and sort of holding that. The bigger question is when the federal government places some obligations on local communities in terms of support of students, that obligation that we're being asked to do should probably be followed by some funds. And so last spring, the Maine Principals Association, the Maine Superintendents Association spent time on collecting information in terms of what would be the overall cost or invoice that we can share with Washington in terms of what our needs are based on the costs that we have for supporting students in our communities. And so this resolution, school districts have been asked across the state of Maine to pass a resolution that we will then send out to Congress and hope to sort of spur them into making sure that if we're going to be asked to do this thing that is the right thing to do in terms of supporting students, then we should be sure to get the financial support to be able to do it to the best of our abilities. And so I'm asking the board to read through the resolution and then to act to sort of pass it for your support. And if someone would like to read the resolution, that would be wonderful.
You have the resolution to read.
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, it's long. Somebody else needs to volunteer, friends. Or is it you? Okay, thanks you.
Whereas public education is the cornerstone of our democracy, providing fundamental skills and opportunities for nearly 90%, 50 million children across the United States. And whereas in the decade following the Great Recession, students across the U.S. lost nearly $600 billion from the state's disinvestment in public schools. And whereas prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, both state and federal funding for public schools failed to meet the critical needs of students across the country. And whereas the federal government provided nearly $200 billion through 3 issuances of the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Act (ESSER) to states and school districts, including $1,913,518.63 to the MDIRSS AOS91 system, which is comprised of the school departments of Bar Harbor, Mountain Reserve, Southwest Harbor, Fremont, Trenton, Mountain Reserve Regional High School, Cranberry Isle, French Girls, Swans Island, and 76. And whereas the realized impact of ESSER funding is that it has benefited students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs through targeted programming and additional personnel, enhanced professional development opportunities, new technology, as well as critical updates to school facilities. And whereas research has consistently shown that increased education funding positively affects academic performance, increases graduation rates, and impacts future earnings. And whereas without an infusion of federal public funding by Congress, it is estimated that districts will have to cut an average of $1,200 per student from their budget. And whereas the systematic and chronic underfunding of public schools is a strategy by those who want to dismantle the public education system to decimate the quality of education that public schools can provide. Whereas when Individuals with Disabilities Education Act (IDEA) was passed in 1975, the federal government committed to paying 40% of the average per pupil expenditure for special education to ensure that every child with a disability has access to a high-quality education. And whereas the financial pledge for IDEA has never been met, it is currently funded at approximately 10.7%, leaving a gap of billions of dollars needed for students. And whereas MDIRSS AOS91 is proud to serve a student population that includes 21% of students with disabilities. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Mount Desert Island Regional School System AOS91 as follows. The Mount Desert Island Regional School System AOS91 School Board calls on Congress to immediately pass the IDEA Full Fund Individual Disabilities Education Act Full Funding Act S 2217 HR 4519, which would create a 10-year mandatory path to fully fund IDEA. And the Mount Desert Island Regional School System AOS91 School Board calls on the state legislature to provide adequate, equitable, and sustainable funding increases to districts to mitigate the harm caused by decades of underfunded schools. Signed this 21st day of October 2024.
So very moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. So that brings us to other business. Any other business? We'll obviously have our continuation of our budget process and our usual reports and updates.
We may have contract negotiation meetings that extend this business, as well as support staff are still coming together. They have some updates on that.
Very good. Any public comment? Okay, our next meeting will be Monday, 18 November 2024, probably 6:30 or 6. Await your email to find out. Oh,
When we agree to the calendar, either the calendar committee or a calendar that's happening or a plan for a calendar.
I have administrators ready, and Jessica and I just need to sit down with those individuals from the board to begin meeting hopefully in the next 2 weeks.
so we'll report. Okay, so next meeting is Monday, 18 November. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Is there, Katie, second?
I bet.
Okay, all in favor?